Welcome to Brampton Focus. He was the 18th Premier of Ontario and responsible for the, quote, the big blue machine. I'm talking about the Honourable William Davis. Now, there's a new book written on him, and the author of the book is the host of The Agenda, seen on TVO every night between 8 and 11. My name is Michael A. Charmont. Next on Brampton Focus, we spend half an hour with Steve Paikin, the author of the brand new book on Bill Davis, right here on Brampton Focus. Welcome back to Brampton Focus. The book's called Bill Davis, a Nation Builder, and it's not so bland after all. It's called by the National Post a bestseller. One would say that it's the first authorized autobiography of Bill Davis, a biography of what's touted as Ontario's most important premier. Bill Davis is described as an enigmatic Ontario premier who carried on a Tory dynasty. That's a pretty big statement. Bill Davis is the father of community colleges, TVO, TV Ontario, OISE, which is the Ontario Institute for Studies in Education, and Bill Davis was also responsible for helping to repatriate our Constitution and our Bill of Rights. Although he was a Tory, he supported Pierre Elliott Trudeau. Very interesting. Now, this book it's 568 pages. It's produced by Dunham, who is the publisher, and we're fortunate to have the author, Mr. Steve Paikin, who is the host of The Agenda, which appears every weeknight between 8 and 11. And the author, Steve Paikin, thank you so much for joining us on Brampton Focus.
Nice to be here. Thank you so much.
Quite a book, 568 pages. It's not a one-night read.
Well, the guy had a long premiership, Michael. What can I tell you?
Oh, well, there's a lot to say. How long did it take you to write this, and how much time did you actually spend with Bill Davis?
The answer to the second part is thankfully lots. The first part is it took a couple of years to write. And beyond that, it took me 10 years to convince him to do it. People in Brampton know Bill Davis. They know he's a fairly modest guy. They know that from the time he was born in 1929, his parents instilled in him to be very modest in all things. And so I think it took him a long time to get his head around the notion of letting somebody in to tell the story. Look, he was premier from 1971 to 85, 14 years, second longest premier in Ontario history. He has a good story to tell. I think nobody had told it adequately, and so I'm thrilled that he gave me the chance to do it.
Interestingly enough, about several weeks ago, we at Brampton Focus had the opportunity to speak to the mayor of Brampton, Linda Jeffrey, because there was a huge announcement about a university coming to this town. He is one of those people who sat on the blue ribbon panel, and when you look back, when he was the Minister of Education in 1971, he increased spending in Ontario by almost 454%, and he made a huge contribution to our school system. Not many people have really talked about that.
Well, it goes. I would say it goes well beyond, a major contribution. The fact is, he modernized the education system in Ontario for nearly a decade in the 1960s. That he was the education minister. We got 5 or 6 new universities. We got the whole college system, as you point out. They were building so much, and the money was coming in so fast back then, Michael. He would be traveling around the province to open 3 new schools every day for lengthy periods of time. It was just boom times in Ontario. And going forward, after he became premier, he obviously still thought of himself as the education premier. He's got teachers who are kids, grandkids. He loves education, he loves teachers, and I think he is responsible for the modern education system in the province of Ontario today.
When you look at the extension of that in 1970 with the creation of TVO, TV Ontario, that was a formidable stick in the sand, as one would say, to actually create a television station for Ontarians, by Ontarians, based predominantly for children's education at the outset. But look at who Steve Paikin is today. I mean, being part of that, that's kind of a huge collateral kind of connection.
You know what he says? You know what he says? Yeah. He sometimes says to me, you're lucky I created TVO, or you wouldn't have had a job for the last 20 years. And I've never argued with him, because I think he might be right. But well, it's huge. I mean, TVO was landmark when he created it. And, here we are 45 years later, and I think still fulfilling his vision of lifelong learning and never stop learning throughout.
When you talk about Bill Davis, you talk about him of being a participator in the Conservative Party, and he transcended a lot of provincial politics. In 2003, he played a successful role in the federal Conservative Party with the Alliance, which was a huge thing at the time, and people were wondering, what are you doing to our party? When you were writing this, how do you broach things like that? Because for some of these guys, it's a kind of sensitive issue, right?
Well, not for him. I mean, he clearly is very proud of the role that he played. Let's go back. 1993, Brian Mulroney is out. Kim Campbell takes over as leader of the PC party. They get reduced to 2 seats, and the old Progressive Conservative Party basically explodes. And it takes a long time to put it back together. It takes 10 years to put it back together. More than that, actually.
But Clark refused to even endorse that idea.
Well, yeah, a lot of progressive conservatives didn't like the idea. But the fact is, as long as there were 2 conservative parties, the PC party and the Canadian Alliance, the Liberals would just swim into office every time because the right-wing vote was split. Davis and Peter MacKay on one side negotiated with Reform Party / Canadian Alliance representatives on the other side, Stephen Harper obviously representing those forces, and eventually they got it back together. And had that not happened, it's hard to imagine that you'd have anything but liberals in office for the last 20 years, just by virtue of the split on the right-hand side.
When you say Peter MacKay, is that the same Peter MacKay who drove up to a beach in a Bombardier?
That's Stockwell Day you're thinking.
Stockwell Day. Okay, well, that's close. Yeah. when you talk about Brampton, interestingly enough, with about 2 minutes left in this segment, Bill Davis still lives in Brampton. He was first elected here in 1959 to the Region Appeal, and it wasn't a particularly landslide. He only won by about 1,000 votes. Yeah. And this was under the Diefenbaker administration, and then Diefenbaker canceled the Avro Arrow. It's like 14,000 people lost their jobs. And you make a comment on that in here. It's interesting.
Well, it is amazing to me that one of the most successful premiers in Ontario history, a guy who never lost an election, either as leader or individually, in Peel or Brampton or whatever, almost never got off the ground because you're right, Dief canceled the Avro Arrow. There were thousands upon thousands of people in Peel who were furious about it. And the next election that took place after that cancellation was the provincial election in which he ran for Leslie Frost. And you're right, he nearly lost his first time out the gate. He was 29 years old, 11th of June, 1959, but he did prevail by, I think, 1,203 votes. And the rest, as they say, is history.
Yeah, well, when Dief canceled the Avro Arrow, many people lost their jobs. There's a whole community in South Mississauga that were brought to the Toronto region to take the Avro Arrow. And when we come back, we're going to talk about Linda Jeffrey, the mayor of Brampton, has 4 pages in Mr. Paikin's book, and there's also a comment that Bill Davis had a little nudge, I should say, to Tony Clement. We're talking to Steve Paikin about the book about William Davis. You're watching Brampton Focus. My name is Michael A. Charbon, back with more right after this. And welcome back to Brampton Focus. In 2012, interestingly enough, the Institute for Research on Public Policies magazine named Davis the second best Canadian premier of the last 40 years, beaten only by Peter Lougheed. Who could beat Peter Lougheed?
Well, I can tell he wasn't happy about that.
I'm joined by Steve Paikin. He's the host of The Agenda, weeknights at 8 and 11 on TV Ontario. And The Agenda, this is a great description. It's called, it engages public-minded individuals in current affairs and social issues in absorbing and insightful manner.
That sounds good.
That's a pretty good pitch. Yeah. And you're an author. I mean, this is what, your 4th book? 7th book. Okay, the other ones I didn't read. So well, you only count what you read, right? I mean, and this thing is just, this thing is monumental. I mean, there's pictures in here. There's, I mean, it really is a tribute to him. Quite an accomplishment, I have to say.
Thank you. You got it. Well, he's 87. He's still alive. He had 25 years in public life. He's had 30 years in post-political life. So there's a big story to tell. That's why it's a big book.
Yeah. Just a couple of weeks ago, the Ontario government announced that 2 sites in Halton and Brampton are going to be the sites of new universities.
Mission accomplished
Bill
for him.
Davis. Well, that's a Bill Davis checkmark, right? Because he was on the blue ribbon panel and he was there. Interestingly enough, the connections to Brampton run actually deep. When we were talking to the mayor, Linda Jeffrey, there is a note, and she says, "Oh, I'm so happy." Steve Paikin had 4 pages on me in the book, and it was so wonderful. She was so happy. But the connection between Davis and Jeffries. Then the phone rang, and it was Davis urging Minister Jeffrey to quit the provincial politics and come home because her city needed her. That's quite an important nudge.
I remember her telling me the story of picking up the phone and hearing that voice. And anybody who's in politics in Brampton knows that voice on the phone. He didn't even have to say, "Hello, Minister, it's Bill Davis calling." He just started talking, and she knew who it was. And I remember the excitement as she was telling me the story. She almost wanted to take the phone away and yell at the rest of the family, "I've got Bill Davis on the phone here." And yes, he did urge her to get in. He was concerned about the way things were working in Brampton. The two of them since have, as you well know, have had their collisions on a variety of issues.
Well, one in particular, we're talking about the LRT.
Absolutely.
I mean, the LRT, Linda Jeffrey was for the LRT. They had meetings at the Rose Theatre. There was all this discussion.
We're both for it. Davis would say, we're both for the LRT. We just disagree on the route.
Yeah, because, well, there's many things to comment about the route, but the bottom line is Linda Jeffrey was for the LRT. It was dismissed by the council in Brampton. Yes, Bill Davis is positive to the LRT. He just didn't like it running up in front of his house.
Well, let's put it this way. Bill Davis, back in the 1970s, was elected the Transit Man of North America. Mm-hmm. So his bona fides on public transit, I think, are pretty much beyond reproach. Yeah, he didn't like the route. I think he's very stung by the criticism that he didn't like it because, quote unquote, it's going in front of my house. He quite rightly points out that by the time any shovels were to go in the ground for that thing, he'd be long gone and not living in that house. I mean,
that's true. That's true.
So
that's true.
The notion that he somehow opposed it because he didn't want the front of his house dug up, I think, is a bit of a tough one.
It's a red herring. It's a red herring. And when you talk about influencing politics when you're out of politics, Tony Clement, we all know who Tony Clement is. Currently, he's a conservative for Parry Sound. In your book, you quote Davis as saying he encouraged Tony Clement to run in 1995, and he said, "You're an articulate fellow, Tony." So Tony lost his first municipal election, which was High Park, I believe it was. He was trying to run for a municipal spot, right?
In Toronto, yep.
Right. And then in 1994, 95 is when he won, and he went on to be very successful. And I guess he could attribute part of that to a nudge from Bill Davis.
No question. And he certainly looks at Bill Davis as a mentor and a friend and somebody whose advice he sought all the time. The funny story that I recall about the Tony Clement-Bill Davis situation was that you're talking, of course, about the Mike Harris government in 1995, which came in, and Tony, of course, is sitting by the phone before the swearing in, hoping that somebody from the Premier's office is going to call and invite him to sit in cabinet. And the phone, well, it's not an unreasonable expectation.
Not necessarily.
They all felt that way. The phone rings. It's Bill Davis. "Tony, don't be upset, but you're not going to make cabinet." "Well, how do you know?" "I just know." And he was right. A couple of years later, phone rings again. "Tony, just want to let you know, there's going to be an announcement coming up in a couple of days about new cabinet positions. You're going in this time. Just thought you'd like to know." "How do you know?" "I just know." Bill Davis has been out of public life for 30 years. He's still got sources everywhere and knows stuff that you can't imagine how he knows everything.
So when we talk about provincial politics, he was an endorser of Christine Elliott. I've had the occasion to meet her on several occasions. Lovely woman, but that didn't work. Now we have Patrick Brown. We've had Patrick Brown here at Brampton Focus. What do you think his opinion of Patrick Brown is?
Well, I know what his opinion of Patrick Brown is because we've talked about it. Mr. Davis and Patrick Brown had a meeting maybe 2 months ago at Mr. Davis's cottage on Georgian Bay. The two of them had a chance to spend 3 or 4 hours together in good, frank, private conversation.
Right.
And I know that at the end of that meeting...
You're a Brian Linehan, you know, if you remember Brian, Steve Paikin, Brian Linehan.
And we're both from Hamilton.
There you are.
Linehan too. Mr. Davis got to the end of that meeting and he said, and he told me, I knew nothing about him beforehand.
Yeah.
As you pointed out.
Yeah.
He endorsed his opponent, Christine Elliott.
Well, he sat across from Trudeau. Patrick Brown sat across from Trudeau, and he's from Barrie, so he's still an Ontario dude, right?
Yeah. Mr. Davis said he was encouraged with the meeting, but I think there's still a sale or that has to be made. I'm not sure he's all the way there yet. Yeah. Patrick Brown, as you've noted, has had a few missteps along the way lately, sex ed curriculum, a number of other things. And as a result, I think the jury is still out. But let me tell you this, Bill Davis is a lifelong progressive conservative. Yeah. And as he's told Premier Wynne and as he's told anybody who will listen, 6 months before the next election, he will be a dyed-in-the-wool progressive conservative and support his party. I mean, he's going to vote conservative in the next election. Make no mistake. Well,
one of the things that Bill Davis is attributed to is the quote, the big blue machine. When we come back in our final segment, we're going to wrap this up. We're going to talk a little bit about Steve Paikin. We've talked about Bill Davis here. We'll talk a little bit about Steve Paikin and some of the interactions he had with Bill Davis. You're watching Brampton Focus. My name is Michael A. Charbon. When we come back our final segment, we're talking about the book Bill Davis, Nation Builder, and Not So Bland After All, with Steve Paikin, right after this. Welcome back to Brampton Focus, our final segment with Mr. Steve Paikin, the host of The Agenda, weeknights on TVO at 8 and 11. His book is published by Dundurn. It's 568 pages, and it's a really cool book. One of the things Steve Paikin says is, quote, "The people are always right," he says, quoting conservative Hugh Segal. Is that true?
Yeah, I believe that. I have a great deal of faith in the public's judgment, and the rest of the quote is, Hugh Segal says, as it relates to elections, the people are always right, they're never wrong, sometimes a little excessive, but never wrong. And I think if you're in this business and you believe in democracy and, each side gives it what they can during the election campaigns, you have to accept the outcome. I'm not sure that's happening in the United States right now, but that's our tradition in Canada.
Interesting. At 19, you worked for the Hamilton Spectator. You were an ambulance chaser and an obituary writer.
That is true.
So, but I got to ask you, what's with the peanut butter on the desk? Like, how the heck did that? I mean, we talking natural peanut butter? We talking crunchy? Like
anything. I eat it every day.
Peanut butter, eh?
Yeah, peanut. Well, in my job, it's often difficult to get out for lunch. So what I do is I keep the big tub of peanut butter there and some, biscuits or whatever.
You do the rice cracker
rice
things?
Cakes,
Yeah,
rice
that's
cakes. And that'll keep you going.
My son promotes that.
Yeah, that'll keep you going for a while.
So one of the things in the book that I wanted to point out, which was very, very cool, was something with regards to Andy Donato. We've had Andy Donato on Brampton Focus. We did a whole half hour with him, another icon in our business. And it says that there was a cigar for a pipe. It was at this time that Bill Davis made a subtle change, as Steve points out, that the Premier traded in his cigar for a pipe. And one of the things was the image was he was looked at as a fat cat. You're a fat cat smoker.
Well, that's the cover of the book, right? That's a great shot.
That's the fat cat shot.
That's a great shot of him celebrating some election victory and the cigar. But they didn't like that image because it did look a bit too Tory Bay Street fat cat. And so at some point he traded in the cigar for a pipe, and he kind of morphed into this Bill Davis avuncular nice guy.
Avuncular?
Avuncular,
That's a $9 word, that one.
And Andy Donato did the cartoon, which showed him with the pipe in his mouth and the cigar in the pipe.
So have you ever seen that cartoon?
Oh, God, yes.
So,
well known.
Brampton Focus, as I said, we had the opportunity to have Andy Donato on the show. So we thought, how appropriate would it be to make a little presentation?
Oh, man, look at that.
For Steve Paikin. We asked Andy Donato to do a drawing for us. This is an original Andy Donato that he did on our show for us. And we thought it only fitting that we should take this and present this to you, Steve.
That is
as
awesome.
a gift from us and Andy. Now you have to sign one of your books for Andy. I got to make sure that I conclude the deal here. But we wanted to present that to you.
That is awesome.
Be a little bit different, but
I certainly remember the original as well, and that is just great. Mr. Davis, incidentally, loves this cartoon. He loves Andy Donato. And I remember when we had our book launch, He said, make sure you invite Andy Donato.
Well, we've been trying to get Mr. Davis on this show, being a Brampton show and being all the success. So you never know. You may have a little influence if you come across that, because you know, there may be more of these. I don't know, but there's only so many, as I said.
I'll cross my fingers.
Well, you never know. So what I want to do here is we've got about 6 minutes left. I want to do a rapid fire question. Just want to find out where you are. So we're recording this show about 2 weeks before the election in the United States. So although the result may be quite evident to you at home, it's not to us. So I'm going to ask you in quick fire questions here.
Okay.
A prediction: Trump or Clinton?
Clinton.
Clinton.
You disagree?
I do. The Wynne government's fate in the next election for Ontario.
You are crazy if you think I'm going to answer that one.
Well, come on. We all thought that she was going to lose because of the gas plants, and we were going to do this, and then all of a sudden, we went blue. I mean, I'm
Michael,
choking.
I have to cover this stuff.
I know you do.
And as a result, I need to keep an open mind.
Come on, do the Steve Paikin Karnak. Come on.
And therefore, one of the things I never do is I never make predictions about these kinds of things that I have to cover on a daily basis. The Trump-Clinton thing, she's 85%, according to polls, going to win it.
Who's the next conservative leader federally?
I don't know.
You're such a going guy. Thanks a lot for that. Is the honeymoon over for Trudeau? Come on, you're a politician.
It's the leadership contest isn't happening until May 2017.
I know, but you're an inside guy.
A week is a lifetime in politics. How many lifetimes is that then?
Is Donna Ambrose gonna run? Do you think?
She's not allowed to.
Okay.
No, they've said she's not allowed to run because she's an interim leader.
So Brexit is a reality. Are we still going to have the euro in 10 years?
Oh, my Lord. Look at these questions you're asking.
What? It's quick, dude. Come on. You're in the business.
Are we still going to have the euro in 10 years?
Yes.
I have no idea.
You can't answer that? I can answer that.
Okay, what is the answer?
No.
What do you think it's going to be?
We're going to go back to the German mark. There's going to be other people who are going to separate. Britain is going to prove that they succeeded by Brexit, and the euro is going to fail because of Italy, Portugal, and Greece.
Michael,
yes?
I only make predictions about stuff that I really know a lot about. So that means like baseball and hockey, okay? The rest of it...
Red Sox.
Right. I don't make predictions about politics because it's just too damned unpredictable.
So if they made a movie of this book, who would play Bill Davis?
I kind of like William Hurt in the title role. He's kind of, you know, good-looking guy, but kind of a blandish face. And Bill Davis, you know, he always used to say, why do you run such a bland government? Well,
my vote's Dan Aykroyd.
Words. Dan Aykroyd?
A Canadian? He could play that with his... Can you not see Dan Aykroyd with a cigar?
That's possible. That's possible.
Come on, that's good.
Good boy. Yeah.
I like that. Okay. So what's next for Steve Paikin? I mean, every night at 11 and 8, we see the agenda. I mean, you are heralded as one of Canada's treasures. I mean, very
Meaning
astute.
You want to bury me, or what is that?
No. But you want people to find you on the dial, and that's TV Ontario. How do you like that for a save? What's next for you?
What's next for me? I'm flying to Sudbury tonight because I'm chancellor at Laurentian University. So I'm going to preside over convocation tomorrow. I do a little teaching at Ryerson as well. The agenda is about a 70 or 80 hour a week job. I think that's my last book. I've written 7 books now, and they take a lot out of you. Mm-hmm. And I've really enjoyed doing this because I really have been so attracted to the subject matter. Mm-hmm. Bill Davis was Premier of Ontario from the time I was 10 till the time I was 24.
You're dating yourself.
My most formative years growing up in the province were his most formative years in politics. So I've really wanted to tell his story. Glad I could, but I'm going to take maybe a long, long break from book writing.
Well, you deserve it. Steve Paikin, the author of Bill Davis, Nation Builder, and Not So Bland After All. It's available on Dundurn, and he is the author. You can also catch Steve Paikin every night at 8 p.m. and 11 on TV Ontario. I'd like to thank you so much for being here.
This is great.
Hope it goes on your wall.
I'm going to get him to sign this. That's what I'm going to do.
That would be very cool.
Yeah.
My name is Michael A. Sherbo. You're watching Brampton Focus. Thanks so much. If you need to get in touch with us, you have any comments or suggestions, bramptonfocus.ca. Thanks for watching. We'll see you again soon.